You are listening to Told After Dark. Before we begin tonight, I just want to remind you of something. Every story you're about to hear is true. These are real accounts from real people with things that have happened to them. Things they couldn't explain. Things they haven't forgotten. And tonight, I have 3 of them for you. Get comfortable, turn the lights down if you can, and whatever you do, try not to listen alone. The first story comes from a woman I'll call Cara. She's 29 years old and lives in Manchester. She sent this in 3 weeks ago. When I read it, I had to stop halfway through, put my phone down and sit with it for a while. She asked me to share it exactly as she wrote it. So that's what I'm going to do. And in her own words, I was supposed to be alone. I want to start by saying I'm not someone who believes in ghosts. I'm a nurse. I work nights. I deal in facts and in evidence. And I've never had any time for anything supernatural. I'm telling you that because I need you to understand what I'm about to describe is not something I have been able to explain. Not then, not now, not once in the 2 years since it happened. It was the 14th of November. I remember because I had just come off a 12-hour shift and I was completely exhausted. My husband, Jamie, was away in Edinburgh for work. He'd been gone since Sunday and wasn't back until Thursday. My daughter Ellie was at her nan's. The house was mine, just mine. I got home around 9, made a cup of tea and sat on the sofa. Fell asleep watching something on Netflix. I don't even remember what. I was just grateful for the silence. I woke up at 12 minutes past midnight. I know that exact time because the telly had turned itself off and the room was completely dark. And the first thing I did was check my phone. 12:12. That's burned into my memory. The house was completely quiet. No wind outside, nothing. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps come from directly above me from my bedroom. I sat up. My heart was going before my brain could catch up. That instinct your body has before you've even had time to think. I held my breath and I listened. And there it was again. A creak. And then another. Like someone walking across the floorboards. Slowly from one side of the room to the other. My first thoughts, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, was the cat. We have a Maine Coon called Milo. He's enormous. He can make a fair amount of noise when he moves around upstairs. But then I remembered Milo was at the vet's. He had had a procedure that morning and wasn't coming home until Wednesday. I put my tea down, the footsteps stopped. I waited. Maybe 30 seconds, maybe longer. Nothing. I told myself it was the house settling. Old Victorian terraced house. They groan and creak all the time. Convinced myself entirely. Finished my cup of tea and then went upstairs. The bedroom was empty. I mean, of course it was. The bed was exactly as I'd left it that morning. I checked the wardrobe, which felt ridiculous, and the ensuite, and there was nothing. I got into bed and I laughed at myself a little. I was overtired, that was all. I turned my laptop off at about midnight. I don't know how long I'd been asleep when I woke up again. This time there was no noise, nothing dramatic. I just opened my eyes, wide awake, like someone had flicked a switch. And I felt it before I saw anything. That feeling, I don't know how to describe it except to say that the air in the room had changed. Like someone had opened a window, but heavier than that. There was a pressure. I was laying on my side, facing the wall. I did not want to turn over. I genuinely, in that moment, didn't want to turn over. And that frightened me in itself. Because I didn't know why, but I did. I turned over. And there was nothing there. The room was dark, the curtains were drawn, and there was nothing there, except the bedroom door was open. I always sleep with the door closed. Always. It's just a habit. Jamie teases me about it. Close it every night without thinking. And I had closed it that evening. I specifically remember I'd gone to get a glass of water just before bed, and I'd pulled it shut behind me. It was open, not slightly ajar, open wide. I stared at it for a long time. My rational brain was working very hard. Old doors swing sometimes. Hinges can be uneven. There are explanations. I got up, I closed the door, went back to bed, but I did not sleep again. In the morning I called Jamie. I didn't tell him what happened. I didn't want him to worry, or worse, laugh. I just wanted to hear his voice. 2 nights later he came home. I told him everything. He didn't find it funny. He went quiet. And then he told me something he had been keeping from me for 6 months. The previous owner of our house, a man who had lived there alone for about 40 years, had died in our bedroom. He was found by a neighbour. They estimated he had been gone for about a week before anyone had noticed. Nobody had told us when we bought the house. I still close the bedroom door every night, but some mornings, now I've stopped counting how many, I've come downstairs and the door at the bottom of the stairs is open. That one I never leave open. Not ever. We'll be back with 2 more true stories in just a moment. If this is your first time here, welcome back to Told After Dark. Every story you hear is real, sent in by real people who've lived through them and never forgot. If you want to hear more, subscribe. And if you have a story of your own, the link is in the description below. This second story comes from a man I'll call Daniel. He's 34, from South Yorkshire. He's an experienced hiker, solo trips all over the country for more than a decade. He told me he's never once felt afraid out there. He said this was the last solo trip he ever took. And in his words, I've been camping alone since I was 19. Moors, mountains, national parks, I've done the lot. I'm one of those people who genuinely loves being alone in the wild. No signal, no one to talk to, just the fire and the dark and whatever's out there. I say that so you understand. I'm not easily spooked. This was October 3 years ago. I was in the Peak District up near Bleaklow. If you know it, you know it's remote. Proper remote. No roads nearby, no villages in walking distance. You can go a full day up there without seeing another person. I made camp by a shallow stream just before sundown. Got the fire going, ate something, settled in. Clear skies that night. The kind you only get far enough from town. I turned in around 10. I woke up at some point in the night to the sound of my tent zip moving. Not the whole zip, not someone trying to get in, just the zipper pull. That little metallic rattle moving slightly, like fingers brushing against it from the outside. I lay completely still. The fire had died down and there was very little light. I told myself it was just wind catching it. Except there was no wind. That night was perfectly still. I'd noticed before I turned in, not even a breeze. I waited. Nothing else. After a few minutes, I exhaled, rolled over, told myself to go back to sleep. And eventually, I did. I woke up again just before dawn. A grey half-light where you can just make shapes out. Cold, I unzipped the tent entrance and stepped out. And I stopped. There was a frost on the ground. Not thick, but enough to show impressions clearly. And there in the frost, leading from the tree line about 30 metres away, directly to my tent, there were footprints. Not animal, not any animal I know of. Bipedal, 2 feet, roughly human in shape. If human feet were slightly too long and slightly too narrow, whatever made them had been walking slowly. I could tell by the spacing, steady, deliberate. They came all the way within about a metre of my tent entrance, and then they stopped. Not turned, not spread out like something crouched, not sunk deeper, like something jumped. Just stopped. As if whatever made them had simply ceased to exist at that point. I stood there in the half dark for a long time, looking at the prints, looking at the tree line, and looking back again. I went through every explanation I could think of. A deer? No, those prints were bipedal. A person, possibly. But why walk to the tent in the middle of the night and do nothing? Say nothing, and why would the prints just stop? Took photographs, I've still got them. I've shown them to people and no one has told me what made them. I packed up the tent, I didn't make breakfast. I walked 4 hours back to my car and I drove home. Like I said, last solo trip I ever took. I don't have an explanation to offer you. I just know what I saw. And I know that something stood outside my tent in the dark, in the cold, close enough to touch the zip and watch me sleep. I'll never know what it was. This last story tonight comes from a woman I'll call Sarah. She's 41, from Birmingham. She told me she almost didn't send it in. She was worried no one would believe her. Well, I believe her, and in her words, it stood at the end of my bed. For 4 months between February and May of last year, something stood at the end of my bed while I slept. The first time I saw it, I was certain I was dreaming. That half-awake state where you can see the room around you, but your mind is still doing strange things. It was a figure, dark, human-shaped, head, shoulders, arms, standing completely still, at the foot of my bed, slightly to the left. I remember thinking in that foggy way you do when you are half asleep, that's strange. And then I was out again. In the morning, I'd forgotten about it entirely. The second time was about a week later. Same position, same stillness. I was awake enough this time to feel the fear before I went under again. A cold drop in your stomach. But by morning, it had the texture of a dream. I let it go. It kept happening every week, sometimes twice. Always between 2 and 4 in the morning. I started checking the clock after. Always the same place at the foot of the bed. Always completely still. And then something shifted. The night that started to truly frighten me was that it didn't feel like a dream anymore. The room was always exactly right. The orange glow of the streetlights through the curtains, the pile of clothes on the chair in the corner, glass of water on my nightstand. Everything exactly as it should be. No dreaming distortion, no gaps in the logic, no strange feeling that something was wrong with the world. Just the room and the figure. I told myself it was sleep paralysis. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was my brain making shapes from shadows. And then one morning in March, I came downstairs, found mud on the kitchen floor. My back door was locked, the front door locked, every window closed. I live alone. But there was mud on the kitchen floor, a trail of it, not large, leading from the back door to the foot of the stairs, and on the bottom's 2 steps. I called my sister, she came around, had a look. She couldn't explain it. She stayed with me that night. Whatever came in the nights, it didn't come while she was there. The night she left, it was back. I moved out in May, told my landlord I'd found somewhere closer to work. I didn't tell him the real reason. I don't know what I would have said. It's been a year. It hasn't followed me. Whatever it was, it stayed there. But there were still nights, even now, when I wake up at 3 a.m. for no reason, with my heart hammering, and I have to make myself look at the foot of the bed. Every time there's nothing there. But there's something I've never told anyone, not even my sister. The last night I spent in that flat, the last night before I moved, I decided I was going to look at it properly, for the first time. Because I'd always squeezed my eyes shut, always looked away before I could really see it. That last night, I didn't. It didn't have a face. That's the only way I could describe it. Not a blank face, not a face hidden in shadow, an absent one. Like the space where a face should be. But it was looking at me. I don't know how I knew that, I just did. I got up, I slept on the sofa. I moved everything out the next morning and never went back. Whatever was in that flat, I don't know what it wanted. I only know that for 4 months it watched me sleep. And that, on the last night, something changed. It knew I was leaving. 3 true stories. 3 people who will never forget what they experienced. If you've had something happen to you, something you can't explain, something that still keeps you up at night, I want to hear it. Send it to the email in the description below. Your story might be the next one read on this channel. If you've been listening for the first time tonight, thank you. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. Hit subscribe if you want more. And if you know someone who loves a good scare, send this to them. Let them listen in the dark. Stay safe out there, and whatever you do, don't look at the end of the bed tonight. Good night.